You know, I think that a lot more people would enjoy going winter camping if it wasn't just so cold. So, in planning for a winter camping trip, part of it, of course, is how are you going to stay warm? Well, I think when most people consider how to stay warm in the winter, it's with a wood stove in a hot stove tent, and definitely an option. But you know, there's a lot of work involved in getting wood ready for use in the wood stove if you don't take it along with you, which of course most people do not. So what other options are there? Well, you know, you could go with an electric heater, but of course then it means you have to have access to electricity. Is there any other option that would be less work than wood, but more convenient than an electric heater? I have one for you. How about a diesel heater like this one from the company VEVOR? If you're interested, keep watching. Before we get started, I do want to thank VEVOR for sending out this model of their portable diesel heater because they do have quite a few different models on their website. If you're interested, I would recommend you do take a look and see the options that they have available. Now, the next thing is this is really going to be part one of a two-part and possibly a three-part video. Let me explain. First off, I've had this heater for a number of months now. I have been testing it out here at home in my backyard. My intent is to do an overnight use of this heater in a hot tent, replacing a wood stove. Well, I have the hot tent now. It took me a while to obtain that, but what I still don't have is the extension for the hot air vent hose, and that's on its way. So once that arrives, I'll be able to set up and do an overnight testing out this heater in a very cold environment. Now, I said a possible three video series, and the reason is well, even a couple of months. I've only used it a few times. When I say, you know, maybe half a dozen times, that's not a long-term use video. So my intent is to do this video, the second video doing an overnight in a hot tent, and maybe a year down the road, next winter presumably, you do it again just to tell you what my experiences have been using this over the course of a year. So what am I going to try and accomplish today? First off, we're going to go through a little bit about the heater itself, and then we'll set it up and we'll do a demonstration of at least how it works. Now, before we dive into the details on the VEVOR diesel heater, I want to talk about diesel heaters in general and their applicability. Are they worth something for you to consider? Well, the intended use I have for this is hot tent camping in replacement for a wood stove. Now, that's not the only use I want to put it towards, but that's my primary use. Now, what else can you use a diesel heater for? Well, think of it this way. This will heat up any reasonable sized area. I'll give you some definition of space sizes in a few moments' time that needs to be heated in a cold environment. It's just that simple. It can apply to, well, I am going to be using it here at home as an emergency backup for my home in the case of power failure. Now, it's not going to heat my home. I don't want to mislead anybody there. But I do believe it will help heat the downstairs basement area of my home and prevent pipes from freezing. So that's a legitimate reason all by itself to have an auxiliary heater like this one. But other uses for it could be if I had an outside shed or garage that was unheated. Absolutely. A small cabin. It would certainly provide at least supplemental heat for a cabin. But a lot of people are using these for overlanding. And that's where you have a Jeep or truck of some type and usually a tent on top, and you want to go camping during the winter, and you can use this to heat your interior of that tent. Well, that's very similar to what I'm going to be doing, hot tent camping. But you can use them in your car. I've actually watched videos where people have used these to heat their vehicle up and sleep inside of their car. Maybe not a common usage for it, but it works. But it would also apply to trucks, vans, larger vehicles. How about sailboats? Those type of thing. Any small space that you need to have a heater, there's a good chance this will actually work. All right, let's dive into a few of the details on this VEVOR diesel heater to see how it works and how you might consider using it. All right, as we get started, I first want to show you just a few details on the heater itself and talk about what came with it. So basically, you get the heater. It's inside of the shell. I'll actually take the shell off so you can see the mechanisms at work on the inside. But you get a number of parts that have to be attached by you. They don't come attached to the heater. And what I mean by that is, first off, you're going to see over here, this is a clean air filter and hose that feeds in underneath on the bottom of the heater here. Easy enough to attach. It's just a cable clamp or a pipe clamp that you can put on very easily. You know, I'm not a technical person. Screwdriver, that's all it took to put it on. Same thing can be said for this, which is the exhaust vent and muffler. You can see if I can tip it up a little bit here. So there's the exhaust vent and muffler. A few comments on that in a few moments' time. And the last thing that I'll show you is this. This is what they give you for the heat hose, or the hose that's going to provide heat to wherever you're at. And it attaches to the heater on the end right here. Now you can see that I don't have it attached. It also comes with a clamp. Only reason being is because, well, I'm going to be removing it again when I get the much longer one. I've actually purchased a 6 or an 8 foot one. That should give me plenty of length to plumb heat into wherever I want to go. Now, in addition, there are a bag of little attachment things, some screws, some clamps, and that type of thing, which have come in useful. And the last thing I can show you is this, which is a remote starter and temperature control for the device. Now, it can be operated on the front of the device, again, more details in a moment, or with this. And this is actually probably the way I'll be using it most often, from inside of the tent, while this resides outside of the tent. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why do I have it attached to a couple of pieces of 2x6 here? Well, here's the reason. You have to put it on something. Without those, this sits so close to the ground, or whatever hard surface that you're going to put it on, that there's really no clearance for either the exhaust pipe or the air vent to plumb out from underneath it. So you need to have it resting on something. It's not for stability. It's actually just for height. So it doesn't have to be a piece of 2x4 or 2x6 like I use, because that's what I have. But you do need to raise it off of the ground somehow. Now, the reason for that is primarily the exhaust pipe. So the exhaust pipe is a nice heavy steel. It will fold and will bend a little bit. It does have a muffler on the end of it. Again, something else you have to attach, but again, very easy to do so. It gets hot. And I mean really hot, hot enough to burn any combustible surface. It will at least burn into the wood. You don't want to lay it on anything combustible, and you do want it pointed away from the heater. Obviously, you don't want it near where the air is being drawn in. You don't want the exhaust drawn back in through the heater and into your tent, into your home, into your shed, wherever you have it hooked up. Now, the other reason for the height and the hose is it's recommended. Is it absolutely necessary? Well, I think it is, but if you don't do it, it's not going to cause any serious problem in the short term. It may in the long term. And that is, you want the exhaust running downhill completely. You don't want it to bend upwards. That's why the exhaust isn't running up the side and sitting at a height. Reason being, condensation. You'll get condensation in the exhaust pipe, and it will pool at the lowest point, and you're going to get rust eventually. So it's better to have this pointed at a continuous downhill slope just to prevent that condensation from happening. Okay, a few more views. Let's go to the back of the device here. Now, I have, it's kind of coiled up with a little cable keeper right here. They provide the hose for the input electricity, which is 12 volt, recommended 12 volt, 15 amps. I'll talk more about that in a moment. It is a fused line, and it did come with a couple of extra fuses if you need them for any reason, but they don't attach it to any type of a connection for whatever use you want it connected to in a 12 volt source. Presumably a couple of rings that you can put it on battery terminals of a 12 volt battery, but that's not the only option. Again, we'll get to that in a few moments. I have it attached to an Anderson connector, often called the forklift connectors as well. I'll explain why in a moment. There is a better length to the hose, or not the hose, sorry, the power cable, and that's, I think, quite important to have. Again, this is because using it with a hot tent, I'm hoping to keep my battery, or my plan is, and I will be, keeping my battery inside of the tent where it is warmer and ensures that the battery is going to be functional down to a lower temperature. All right, so that is the back, and you can see here, this is the heater fan vent, so this is where it just draws in a little extra air to cool off the heater itself. Let's turn the device around. It has a bit of weight. I'll give you those specs in a moment, but it's not overly heavy. Now, on the front, there's really only two things to see. This is the LCD panel. It's a control panel. It just has 3 buttons, an on and off switch, and an up and down arrow for temperature control. This is the output vent. This is where the hot air is going to be coming out from the heater and plumbed into wherever you want it to go. Now, to take this apart to show you the insides, let me just do that. I have to first unclamp my input hose. There are, get my fingernails to work here, just little closures on the sides. Undo them so I can open it up and take it apart. And just lift off the top. I think I have to get my, oh no I don't. There we go. All right, so there is the top off of it. So the mechanism is actually very simple and quite amazing when you think about it. The technology that goes into making this operate and operate so, how should I say, consistently and without issue is quite simple. Small reservoir for your diesel fuel, 1.5 gallon, 5 liters, I think it is. That's how much this will hold. I'll talk about how long that will run the device in a few moments' time. And on the bottom is the diesel heater. Very simple device, actually quite small when you think about it. Everything else is just the frame. Now, there's a couple things worth noting. There is a fuel filter that will obviously filter your fuel before it goes into the heater. And this is the pump. Now, the pump comes up quite often in the research I talked about, because as you will hear, not so much see, as you will hear when I get it outside and start it up, is that the pump makes a clicking noise as it pumps. Some people find it quite objectionable. I haven't yet. Maybe it's because my hearing isn't as good as it could be, but I haven't found this to be an issue. I'll let you hear it. I'll let you judge for it yourself. If you discover that you find that to be an annoying noise, and it only happens for a short period of time as the heater is actually ramping up and coming up to heat, if you find that annoying, then there are some alternatives to this. This can be replaced. You can put insulation on the inside of it. I watched a number of videos on how people went about making this a quieter device. To me, it seemed like, why did I not just buy the next device up in terms of expense and quality, and maybe it would avoid some of these noises. If it's an issue for you and you're a DIY person, very easy to replace all of these components if that's what you want to do. All right, I'm going to take a second to put the case back on and we'll talk about a few of its specifications. Okay, I just want to take a moment to go through a few of the specifications for this version of the diesel heater before we get it outside and do a demonstration. But I'm just going to go over the highlights because I'll put the rest of the specifications in the video description if you want to get into some of the details, as well as the links, of course, to where you can take another look at this heater and the other options that are available from VEVOR. So one of the questions right off the top is just how heavy is it? How easy is this going to be to transport? Well, the device itself comes in at 18.8 pounds. That's not overly heavy. I have wood stoves that are heavier than that. I have wood stoves that are lighter than that, but this is not bad in terms of 18.8 pounds. Now, that doesn't include the pieces of wood that it set down, and it doesn't include a full tank of fuel. Now, I talked about the tank of fuel a moment ago. It is a 5-liter fuel reservoir, which is 1.3 imperial gallons, just for your knowledge. Now, the question you're saying is, well, that means, of course, I have to carry fuel with me. Yes, so you are going to have to purchase another container for carrying your diesel fuel with you. Well, that makes sense. And I know people are asking, well, how much trouble is that going to be refilling this? How often do I have to do it? What is it going to be messy? Is it going to be smelly? My experience so far is it is neither messy nor smelly, as long as you don't spill your diesel. Make sure you're doing that outdoors. It's not for indoor operation. There is an exception to that, but it's not intended for indoor operation. So as long as you do it outdoors, you shouldn't have an issue. But how often are you going to refill this? Well, this is the literature according to the company, but having spoken with a friend of mine who does have these VEVOR diesels and actually did a video on how long that actually will run, the company claims a full tank of full tank of diesel fuel will last you about 8 hours. But that is on high, and that's actually a low estimate. It should last even longer than that. So if you can get a full night out of this, blasting that at full temperature inside of your tent, then that's pretty good. Reality is you don't run it at full temperature. You wouldn't be able to stay inside of your tent. Now, depending on how cold it is, of course, but you can turn this down. You may want to turn it on high for a while, heat your room up, your tent up, but then turn it down and let it run all night if that's what you want to do, and keep yourself reasonably warm. You should be able to get at least 2 nights out of it that way. Now, depends again how much you're going to be running it during the day. I guess my point is no, you don't have to refill these very often. They're especially fuel efficient, well worked out. This is a technology that has been in use for a long period of time, and it's just refined to the point where it's almost foolproof. It usually or rarely has any problems with it. It's especially fuel efficient, and it works. I guess that's the best thing to say about it. All right, now there is one other component that does not come with the heater that you're going to need in order to run it, and that is a 12-volt DC power source of some type. Most people will consider using a battery like my LiTime lithium iron phosphate battery that I have here. I've reviewed this just recently, and now I'm going to be putting it into operation with my heater. And if you're interested in the review of the LiTime battery, I'll put a link for that at the end of this video. This is one source of 12-volt power. You need at least recommended by the company, 12-volt 15 amp power. That's what they say is required to run this. Now, that's only partially true. You do need upwards of 15 amps, probably more like 10 amps. They say 15 to be on the safe side, but that's really just to get the device going. It needs the glow plug, which is what diesels have instead of a spark plug, to heat up to a point where it will ignite and the diesel fuel will start burning. So it does draw a considerable amount of power when it first ramping up to speed, and I mean ramping up. It sounds like a jet engine, as you'll hear when we do get it outside. But once it's up to full temperature, then the power draw is back considerably, somewhere around 3 amps. So this is not required to run it. It's more about being required to start it, and that's why you need a good size power source like this. Now, I say need is relative. I've watched a number of videos where people have gotten away using portable power stations like a Bluetti. I have a connector that I'll be trying that out with. I have not done that yet, but it'll be interesting to see if I can power the diesel heater with my Bluetti power station. I think I will leave that for the next demonstration where I take this and hook it up to the hot tent. So that's what you need, is some type of a 12-volt power source in order to get this up and running, and of course to run the fans after the fact. All right, we've brought the heater out into my backyard. Beautiful day out, only about -6 degrees Celsius, a little bit of a light snow falling, but very little wind. That's what makes it a nice day. Okay, so just a couple things before we turn the heater on. First off, I don't think I showed you this the last time, and that is these vent windows on the side. You can probably see it going up and down. That's just a visual indicator of approximately how much diesel is left in that tank. There's no numbers on the side of it, so it just gives you an idea. I'm about 3/4 full right now. I just filled it up before getting ready to do this video, just to make sure that I had fuel in here. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out is the remote starter itself. As I mentioned, it's just very simple, on, off, plus, minus, and that's going to allow me to operate the diesel heater remotely to a range of about 32 feet. At least what the manual says. I haven't been away that far from it just to see if it will work. And the LCD display. Now, a couple things here. First off, this is something you must do the first time you go to use it. You only have to do it the once. You don't have to do it after that. And that is a priming sequence. It's a sequence of getting diesel fuel into the generator before the glow plugs start their work and heating it up. Now, I'm not going to go through the sequence here for you because it differs on each of the models of this. Now, there was a manual that came with this device, and I lost it. I don't know where it is. I honestly don't, so I can't show you the manual. Having said that, I went to the website and downloaded the PDF version, readily available, so I don't feel like at a loss for it. It is good to have the manual, either in PDF or the physical paper form. I'll get to why in a minute. The bad part about the manual is, well, first off, it's not so bad. It covers all the different models, 3 different models at least, of VEVOR diesel heaters. There are other ones on their website, but it covers the 3 basic ones. And it's not specific to any of them. So when it comes to the operation, it differs for each of those 3 models. So to tell you what to do for this one would not be the same as what happens on the other one. Now, there's another reason for me to mention that, is that the document itself, the manual, has a series of error codes. And that's the reason why you want to keep it. Very little chance of anything going wrong with this, short of it being damaged somehow, and I don't know how you could go about doing that with any reasonable care. But I did do this. I wanted to see what would happen. I let it run out of fuel to watch it shut down. And what happened is it came up with error code. I think it's error code 8. Went to the manual. Yes, that's all it told me, that I'm out of fuel. Refilled it, no problem at all. I just wanted to test and see what would happen if I ran it right to empty. So do keep the manual for the error codes. Not so much the rest of the operation. It can be a little confusing to read, but do learn how to prime your device, whichever one you buy, before using it the first time. After that, you don't have to. You don't have to do it. Now, last thing I'll say before we get going, you're actually going to be able to see this or not see it, and that is the point. The LCD display on this one is not great, and I've been calling it LCD because it's not LED. It's liquid crystal display. It is green, and it is a very low light, and it's very basic. There is a time function which I haven't bothered to set, and it's just basically shows me the ambient temperature when I turn it on, or thereabouts. I think having brought it outdoors from inside, it probably won't show -6. But then the temperature you set it to, so I can, and it's in Celsius, so I'll set it to, I don't know, 24, 26 degrees just to get it to ramp up to a fairly high temperature. And you do that with either the up or down arrows and the on-off button to get it started. It has a voice. It tells you that it's about to do something. I can't make it out. I have no idea what it's saying, but it does have a little voice that comes out of this little tiny speaker right here. All right, one more thing I wanted to mention, only because I failed to do so inside, is why did I decide to use Anderson connectors? Well, my lead time battery came with Anderson connectors for the charging unit, and I thought made the most sense. I have a connection right here. It's a very secure, very strong, very high amperage connection. Why not just use the one that came with it? So I bought a set of Anderson connectors so that I could wire it to the diesel heater, and if I don't like it, you can change it. I know a lot of people are going to use 12-volt cigarette lighters with their power station. I have yet to test that. I will be testing that to see how that works out. All right, that's everything. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to turn it on using the remote. It'll speak to me. I won't be able to hear what it says. I'll let you see as closely as I can what it's saying on the monitor itself as it warms up. And you'll notice right away that you'll hear a pumping noise, click, 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 and that's the pump starting to put fuel into the heater. Sometimes, not always for whatever reason, I get a little puff of smoke out of the muffler at the back, just as it's starting up. That's the excess fuel in the diesel heater, presumably burning off, and then the fan will start to ramp up. And after that, well, I'll just let you hear it and experience it yourself. So let me just kind of turn this around a little bit to make sure that you can see what's going to happen. All right, let's turn the device on. It's telling me that it says -4 outside. Now that's getting close to where we're at. I'm going to move around so that you can hear the fuel pump starting up. Actually, I'll take the microphone right off and hold it up near the device. Probably hear now what I'm meant when I say it ramps up like a jet engine. It does take a bit of time for it to come up to full temperature. Mildly warm air, not hot yet. Starting to warm up. So I wanted to give you an idea of what it sounds like as it warms up. Now we're starting to get some hot air. Not hot yet. It'll get to a point where I may not even be able to hold my hand there. I don't even know what temperature it's set at. All right, I've got it set for 28 degrees Celsius. That's about as high as it will go. Now we're starting to get some heat coming out of it. I'm going to back away from it just for a second so I can make another comment and have you hear me. I did this intentionally for you to be able to see the LCD display, just to see how, I don't know, I'm going to say poor. This is my one disappointment with this device, is that the LCD display is very hard to see in the daytime light, and it's very basic. It is telling me what the ambient temperature is, and it's telling me what I've got it set for. That's all it does. Now, here's going to be a bit of a judgment, and I think this is worth doing if I was to do it over again. This model is the base model in this style for the diesel heater from VEVOR. For less than $10 more, you can get another display which has much more information displayed on it and much more control. Plus, it is Bluetooth enabled, so you can do it all from your phone at a distance. So that's what I wish I had, was the Bluetooth controlled one, so that I could see what's going on with the heater from inside of my tent without having to get up and come out and trying to decide what the error code, if an error does occur, of course, on the outside. All the controls would be right on my phone. You don't have to use them. You can still use the key fob and the display, but having the option of using the phone will actually make quite a difference in the usability of the device. Let's just check. All right, now that's hot. That is actually hot air blown out with a lot of force. All right, that's as far as I wanted to take the demonstration today. We'll wrap this video up. All right, as I wrap this video up, there is one more comment about the operation of the device that I think is very important to know, and that is when you shut the device off, either using the remote or the display, and you hit off, it doesn't shut down right away. It actually has to go through a cool down period. So it'll start to ramp down, but the fan will continue to run just to make sure the heat does not build up. It does have overheat protection and would shut itself off anyway, but you don't want damage to occur from allowing it to remain hot. So let the device cool down on its own before you disconnect it from its power source. So that's quite critically important to remember as well. Okay, I am wrapping this video up for today. It's, as you can see, it's still running in the background here, pumping out a lot of heat into my backyard. But in very short order, I will have my hot tent set up and the extension pipe that I need to pipe the heat into the tent, and we'll do an overnight. Now, in full disclosure, it's going to be here in my backyard because it'll be the first time using this setup in combination. You want to do it somewhere where you can test it out in case it doesn't go the way you expect it to, and you can retreat to the warmth of your house. So that's what I'll be doing. Eventually taking it into, well, not necessarily into the woods, but maybe into one of the campgrounds where I can camp over the winter. All right, if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments section below. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.